Welcome to the Socks Gone podcast, where we unravel the secrets of exceptional customer service and show you how to knock your customers' socks off. Tune in, get inspired, and take your service to the next level. Socks Gone, where our socks are always knocked off.
Welcome back to Socks Gone podcast, where our socks are always knocked off. I got a very special guest today. Very excited to have him here. Kurt Denninghoff with Pivotl, Fractional CFO services, and much more. Very excited to have you today, Kurt. Kurt, what we would like to start with is your journey. How did you get started in the trades? How did you get where you are today?
Well, great to be here, Corey. I appreciate you having me on. My start actually got when I was 19. I started doing door-to-door in the residential electrical space, and in college, and got thrown into door knocking to selling electrical services, door to door. So that was really my
Wow.
start, and then that morphed into HVAC, and then really heavy in the financial and tech side as I got older and more mature.
Awesome. So door to door. How long did you do that for?
4 years,
4 years.
all through college, every single summer.
That's exciting, man. Door to door is a great place to I feel like everybody, I don't care what you do, should experience door to door. Wouldn't you agree? It builds character.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does. It is brutal at times, but the things you see, the houses, the customers, like you get a really good feel for who's actually buying, our services in the home service space. It's an interesting experience, though.
It
No
is.
doubt.
It is. And what would you say your closing rate was on those door to door, like actually getting a customer that was interested and invited you in or set up an appointment? What was your experience? That was
Yeah,
a while ago.
yeah. I mean, it was typically, I'm a numbers guy, so I do my numbers. It was,
Uh-huh.
we'd knock 100 doors a day, and if you knocked 100 doors a day, you'd have, 10 opportunities, usually 10 people to answer, where the wife and husband are both home. Out of those 10, usually get inside to about 2 to 3 houses they let you in, and maybe one of those would close. So
Yep.
that was about the numbers that we would play, right? Hey, get out there and get dropped off at 11 o'clock and get your 100 doors in.
Yeah, and that's been about my experience too. I did a lot of door knocking for my own businesses, but I did the most. I work for a pest prevention company called Massey Services. They're a real large, privately owned company, and I did sales for them. And I remember doing door knocking, and it was that same thing. You just knock, 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 door hanger, but then you'd get that one that would make it all worth it, right? That would turn into a sale. So that's cool. So started there, and what did you ever think about this when you were younger, home services, or is this something that you really just kind of fell into after that?
It's one of those things. I think most of us go through this, where kind of where we end up sitting kind of falls into our lap, either through luck or divine intervention. I'm not sure which,
Mm-hmm.
but it's definitely just something I slowly gravitated towards. I was always interested in the technology side, and that eventually led me into the financial. And so it was a slow transition, but definitely happened over time.
Gotcha. That's awesome. And when did, because I know you were HVAC Success, you recently just branded to Pivotl, which I love. How long's HVAC Success been around? And, what was the inspiration to actually start your own company?
Yeah, so we've been around for a little over 3 years now, 3.5 years. And then now Pivotl, of course. So we rebranded about 6 months ago. And the inspiration was, prior to this, I was working for a consulting firm in our space that was pretty privately owned, but we would go into companies and we would help them scale from 3 to million to 10 million. And it was my job actually meeting with the clients and taking them through the process of getting their books cleaned. And what I identified after doing this for several years was that typically the local bookkeepers, the team that are managing the service titan to the financial side, don't know the right process to put in place to actually get the data that you need in order to be successful. And so, it would take me, when I was in that role, 10 months, 11 months, 12 months of working with the local bookkeeper along with whoever was managing Service Titan to get the data out of it so that we could understand, profitability and gross margin by business unit. So we could understand, if you were doing HVAC service versus HVAC install, how profitable are we in those individual departments? And from doing that over and over again, I realized there was a huge gap just in the bookkeeping knowledge. And so I wanted to get that timeline from 10, 11 months down to, 30 days. And so the reason I started HVAC Success, now Pivotl, is that by controlling the process and putting trained people in that understand how to get that outcome, we can step into a company, do the cleanup, fix the data side and service tighten, connect everything together quickly. And now the actual outcome that the owner wants, which is the reporting that they need to go drive the business forward and get profitable, instead of that taking 10 months of paying an expensive consultant that works as your team, we could do it in 30 days. And so
That makes sense. Yeah,
just the outcome we could deliver. And so I saw that opportunity and I built a team around it.
well, it's so awesome, and I see the work that you do and the results that you're getting, and it is so cool. What is you've been doing this a long time. You've been looking into a lot of contractors' books and accounting and what they have going on. What's one of the most common mistakes you see contractors making?
I would say the most common mistake that we see is not starting with the end in mind. So the integration between your price book and, I'm going to get a little technical, but the price book, income and expense accounts, not flowing over properly to your accounting system, and then not using business units correctly and linking those correctly to QuickBooks. And so it really comes down to the integration. So the tech side, which is one of the sides that we added in the last 6 months, we now have 2 Service Titan certified coaches on our team in order to solve and really provide a lot of support on that side. Because originally we started out with just doing the accounting side, but we realized okay, even if you get the accounting side right, there's so much in Service Titan or other CRM that controls how the data flows over. And so now we attack both so we can do it even more effectively. So the biggest mistake that we see is just not having the initial setup proper and the workflows built so that the entire team understands what they have to do to have the data come out on the other end correctly. So, it's garbage in, garbage out. If the data isn't coming in correctly from, according to your side, right, on the call center side that you guys, have expertise in and focus on, if the data doesn't come in correctly there, if the job doesn't get booked right, if that price book item that they end up selling isn't tied correctly, right? So that whole workflow from first call coming in to the job being sold and installed and eventually paid for, that workflow has to be done correctly, and the back end has to be set up properly to make it so that on the 10th, 12th of the month, that owner can be looking at financials that give him the direction to understand where to take the business and what actually happened last month. And so that's the biggest gap we see. And so and kind of what controls that too, Corey, is how fast can we get the reporting out so that the owner can make actionable decisions based on the financials. So if it takes 2 months after the month closes to get that data, it's too slow, right? You're looking in the rearview mirror 2-3 months. How can you make actionable changes? And so the reason you want to get all that stuff correct is so that instead of it being 2 months after the month closes, 5, 10, 15 days after the month closes, you're looking at your financials, you're looking at the reporting, and you can understand what needs to change during the month you're in. So
Love it.
that's the biggest mistake we see.
So important. So important. And as you know, Kurt, this podcast is focused around customer service, and I have a bunch of different guests have different skill sets and different backgrounds from different industries. I'm curious, how would you say that having your books in order, right? Having your accounting in order and things set up like the way you like to see it set up, right? Optimal, right? Pivotl. So how do you think that impacts the actual customer service when a company is set up right on the back end with their books? How does that overflow into customer service?
Interesting question. I would say the way that impacts customer service is going to be twofold. The way that we treat and the way that we can pay our employees is ultimately going to be the frontline team members that can go in and then service our customers. And so when you have your financials dialed in, you can be super aggressive in terms of paying your guys the most. You can be super aggressive in terms of the discounts you can give to customers that deserve it, right? But without understanding exactly where you are financially and without being completely tuned up, you're a little bit shooting in the dark. And the other thing is you can't recruit the best talent because you can't pay the most. right? So if you can get your numbers really tuned up properly, this will give you the juice and the financials to be able to then pay the guys the most, who then will treat the customers the best.
I love it. I love it. And it just gives you, when your financials are in order, I know whether it's my business financials or my personal financials, and you know this, Kurt, it just gives you confidence. Like when I just, when my finances are messy, my books are a little out of order. Maybe I skipped it last week. I didn't get, I didn't do my weekly overview of things. It affects how I feel, how I perform, because it's in the back of my head, right? But when I know that my books are in order, when my financials are in order, I know what my spending power is. I know what my marketing budget is. I know what I can discount. You're right. It gives me such a confidence. It gives me such a peace of mind, and it helps me perform better in other areas. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It also gives a lot of confidence on pricing too, right? So if you know that where you're pricing at is fair, right? And you know how much you're making on each each department or each line item that you're selling, it gives you the confidence in your own pricing where, there's always that spectrum where you go from, okay, are we overcharge the customer and price gouging, or are we underpricing and we're not making any money?
Right.
And so knowing exactly where you need to fall in order to make a, fair and ethical profit margin where you feel good about it. And at the same time, being able to have the confidence to tell your technicians that, no, this is exactly where we need to be priced at, and tell the customers that, it gives your whole team confidence.
Yeah. And I think one thing I've seen in companies that I've managed, with technicians is they're going to be great at sales, right? Well, one, they got to believe in themselves. They got to believe in the company, right? And in their product, but they also got to believe in their price, right? And
Yes.
I see so many technicians, they're not doing well in sales. They got the skills, they know what to do, but they're not selling because they think their company's too expensive, right? And that's usually not the case. It's just that technician doesn't understand why we charge what we charge. So as the owner operator of that company, when you're confident in your prices and you clearly understand why you're charging what you charge, like you said, that ethical price, that you can pass that on to your technicians and therefore give them confidence to go out in the field. And when they present that premium system to the customer, they can look that customer in the eyes with confidence and say, John, this is $15,000, right? We can get this installed today. They don't put their head down. They don't lower, their tonality doesn't change. They're confident, right? Because they believe in their price. They know we're worth that $15,000. We're worth that $20,000. But you just can't do that if you don't understand your pricing, right? If you don't understand why you're charging what you're charging. We all know that it all starts from the top, right? So if the owner and management isn't confident in what we're doing and we're winging it, well, guess what? Our technicians are too. So, man, I just see
Exactly right.
how these services, CFO services, getting your books in order, understanding your numbers, your margins, how this overflows, not just for your technicians, but in your call center as well. Of course, you want your whole team to be confident in what you're doing and in your numbers. So, and you can do so much more for your team. Like you said, you can reward your CSRs in the call center. You know what you're working with. So vital.
Exactly.
So vital. Awesome.
100% agree.
Well, I appreciate you sharing all that. I want to hear more about how you can help others. But before we do that, I would like you to share what I call a socks gone story, a moment where you knocked a customer's socks off with your services. You got one for us?
Yeah. Absolutely. So this one actually was fairly recent that we worked with the customer, and they had come to us due to the fact that they had switched from an old software. Many of us remember Successware from back in the day, kind of the precursor to Service Titan, and the original great software that's out there. And they had migrated from Successware, legacy company, to Service Titan and QuickBooks. And of course, Successware, if you're familiar with that, is a full ERP where you had your accounting and your workflow, everything was built into just Successware. And so splitting that data out between QuickBooks and Service Titan, they came to us and they had duplicate data going back 5 years, 6 years that shouldn't have been in Service Titan. We had thousands of unexported invoices. We had payments that hadn't been moved over. The financials had been moved between desktop and online. And, they're on pace to do $9 million. And we didn't have a set of financials for the last 6 months.
Wow.
Bookkeeper stressed out. The owner stressed out, right? He's running blind right now. And everybody's kind of just throwing their hands up in the air, like, we don't even know where to start. We've got thousands of unexported invoices. We got payments we don't know how to move over. Reconciliations haven't been done for months and months. And, it's one of those things. It's like when you walk into your closet and it's such a mess and you don't even know where to start. Like, do you pick up the shoes for, like, where, and you end up just shutting the door. You're like, you know what? I'm going to deal with this next weekend. I don't know where to start. And so, similar to that situation. And so, what we did and kind of our approach to it was we really laid it out in sections. So we did a Service Titan audit where we looked through and figured out exactly what needed to be done on that side. We went through the financial side in QuickBooks, and then a combination of our team, we laid out a plan in order to get that all cleaned up. And, it involved, obviously, we have to get the Service Titan data clean, identify what's good, what's bad. So we started there. The QuickBooks side, we built out a new chart of accounts, integrated the two together, and then started slowly and methodically cleaning up all that data. And so, one thing was powerful about this is, our team is able to handle situations like that and walk the customer through and get a plan in place. Is exactly what needs to be done to get to the other side. And so, over several months and working on this, directly with the team, doing weekly meetings, we were able to take that from awful mess, and by brick, get that to where the data is clean, everything's flowing over, and, now they're able to actually understand where their financials are at. And so to get to that outcome, though, it was a combination of our team coming in, doing obviously big, heavy lifting on the data side to matching between QuickBooks and Service Titan, and then also training that team. As everybody knows, Service Titan's onboarding can sometimes be limited. And so we train in the proper workflows with everybody from the admins to the people that are purchasing materials. I train them on how to use the proper payroll system inside Service Titan so we can get payroll into Titan and get the POs done. So that way we can get our gross margins. And then from there, fix the QuickBooks side. And so very methodical approach to it. But the outcome of that after 90 days was a clean set of books. They know how to use their software. And so now this back half of the year, they can march towards profitability.
That's awesome. Socks gone. So yeah. That's awesome. So what a great example of how your services can make a huge difference. And how many contractors are out there today, maybe listening now, that are in that situation? They got a lot of good things going on in their company, but they keep closing the door. Like you said, they keep closing the closet door on those books because it's a mess and they just don't know where to start. So that leads us right into how you can help contractors with this stuff. If you could just kind of give us an overview of the things that you offer and how you can help your contractors get their books in order and be able to do the things that we're talking about.
Yeah, so the way that we engage is, and the way that we help contractors like this, we first start out with an audit. So we want to look at how you're using your CRM, how are you using your QuickBooks, and in this financial review, we're going to lay out the core gaps in your Service Titan and the core gaps in your accounting workflows, and then lay out a full plan in terms of where you're currently at and what it's going to take to get to where you want to be. That review process we provide to clients, regardless if they decide to use us to do it or not. And so a lot of times, companies will come in, have us do that full review for them and give them a roadmap. Okay, here's the roadmap for your company specifically to go from where you're currently at to where your workflows are working correctly. And at the end of that month, you can get the financials that you want, which are going to be broken out by department and gross margin by department, so that then you can take that and proceed. If if we work with us, we've got, the team to step in to help you do it, either weekly calls and take you through that process, collaborating together. And then on an ongoing basis, if you don't have a bookkeeper, seems pretty common in the space now that a lot of times guys have built their business from, very small to large, and, maybe the owner's mom is doing the books is very common, or the owner's wife is doing the books and she wants to retire or step out anyway at this point. And so, we also have the resources to take that on an ongoing basis or provide support, whatever's needed in order to make sure that owner on a monthly basis gets those financials that they need to be able to make decisions. That's kind of our process when you engage with us and the outcome we create on the other side.
I love it, Kurt. And very similar. I know me and you were just talking recently how similar our processes are. And when we met, it just happened to be, Sock Knocker, we start with the audit, right? We do a call center audit to figure out what's going on. And then we offer similar services just on the call center side. And I think one of the coolest things you offer and what we offer is the fractional CFO service. And we offer the fractional CXO service. And I think one of the best ways to put it is you get that executive leadership without that full-time overhead, right? Because not everybody, whether you're a private operator or you're a group, right? You have multiple brands. Not everybody needs to bring in a full-time CFO. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the big motivation for our CFO services, is bringing the executive leadership and the skill set that 30, 40, $50 million companies can afford, but you can get it at the 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, $15 million level, so that way you can access that skill set and access the knowledge without having to pay for the full-time person.
Absolutely. It's such a great program. Well, Kurt, thank you so much for your time today. It's been very, very valuable. Looking forward to having you back. And everybody listening and watching, thank you so much for tuning in to the Socks Gone podcast. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Socks Gone, where our socks are always knocked off.